I'm back in the saddle again.
Put your pinky rings up to the moon. Look out. Pop, pop, it's showtime. Showtime. Guess who's back again? Keep up.
Live, local.
Yeah.
Ruffling feathers like no one else can.
Oh, behave.
Making afternoon radio great again.
Put your pinky rings up to the
Dialing it in from the right side of the galaxy with a serious dose of truth, justice, and freedom to have fun.
All right.
This is the Ross Report.
Well, it's a fabulous Friday. It really is. Anytime we have guests in the studio, it's fabulous. First, I'll tell you why else it's fabulous, because our good friends at Service Chevrolet Cadillac are helping to make the Ross Report possible every single Monday through Friday, and we're so thankful and grateful to them that they do. And by the way, if you want to be thankful and grateful, just go ahead by and look at all the Chevy cars, trucks, SUVs, one of the most amazing selections of automobiles in the state, according to current GM data. And that includes the fabulous Cadillacs that we love to talk about here. It's like a rolling living room, all the amenities you could possibly want. I mean, even a heated steering wheel. Can you believe that? Anyway, backup camera, all that good stuff. They're right there at 1214 Ambassador Caffrey Parkway, just off I-10, easy to get to, so easy to deal with. Service Chevrolet Cadillac. If you want to check out the selection beforehand, just servicegm.com, Cadillac at service.com. So we are so pleased to have with us in studio two gentlemen who have done some amazing work. And if you watched, as I did, and that is why I called them and texted them this morning and said, you guys need to come on, because I don't think anybody expected, at least of all the folks who were hosting the meeting last night, to have two people who were so well prepared with statistics, with information, and with a little bit of pushback as to why we don't need more property taxes. We simply need to collect the taxes that were legally owed. And those two gentlemen are Tim Supple and Adam Chapman, both of iLandmen, and also folks who do a lot of research, especially about property taxes, about land usage, et cetera, because your business is sort of that, isn't it?
No, actually, our business is not. It's we're in the software, SaaS model software business. It really has nothing to do with this. It's just a passion that we've gotten on to go look at this.
So, but you do this sort of thing for landmen and for abstractors and that kind of business. That's the kind of business you supply them with the software, et cetera.
Actually, we don't supply them with much data. The software, no, but it is.
I'm just batting zero.
No,
here.
it is. It's all right, but it is. We're a software model. Think of us like you would an accounting program in the cloud.
Right.
So they gather the data, use our software to process it.
Oh, okay, fine. So you've got the software to go ahead and analyze the data.
Right.
Okay,
right.
And that's what you've done.
Right.
And last night, what you did was pretty amazing. So, Tim, I'm going to start with you. Tell me exactly, when you made that presentation, you actually Adam handed to the councilman your assessment of some properties that are not even being assessed now, right? They're getting tax breaks, et cetera.
Let Adam answer. He's the one that did it.
Sure. Right. This information comes from the assessor. So these are the local statistics. And what we had here that we gave to the council was a breakdown of the 2015 property tax exemptions.
Okay.
And so this is coming from Conrad Como, the assessor. And
that was the last full year that he had available.
Right. We don't have all the statistics yet for 2016.
Okay. Go ahead.
And so what this shows is that there's a pretty long list here, and it's pretty surprising on the amount of money that's not being collected. And these are property taxes on land and movable property. And if you look at this total, it's $3.2 million in property tax that is not being collected.
Annually.
And as far as we can tell, this may not be all of it because there are a number of different programs that are in place that companies use to get these sort of exemptions and abatements. And this doesn't include some of the bigger projects. For example, Costco, that just took place last year, would be one that's not included on this list.
This is not included in this.
Correct.
Because it came in 2016.
Right. So that's going to add probably close to $750,000 in uncollected property tax.
Right, because that abatement for them, that pilot for them was $11.5 to $12 million over a 10-year period. So that'd be about right. It'd be about $1 million a year. Right. That's pretty amazing.
Sure, and it's surprising, and I think it's surprising to a lot of people, and it's it seems very pertinent that we sat there in front of that budget review committee and heard about the that we've got the 10 years or more of dwindling tax revenue budgets, and they're slashing things across the board up to 20%. And so we're wondering where we need to go find this money. But to me, it seems like it should be pretty easy because these are things that we are allowing to happen.
Well, and they've been rolling forward the millages. I mean, or they've allowed the millages to roll forward. So it's not as though people are not paying more property taxes. We are.
Right.
We are paying more property taxes.
Right.
And people feel that every time the millages are allowed to roll forward. So they wonder, where's the money going? But when you see major exemptions such as this, you can understand why they keep crying for more money. But they could start with cleaning house on this. Now, how many of these are legally in place, like for a period of time, a certain period of time?
All of these are legally in place. They start off with usually most property tax exemptions are a 5-year guaranteed and usually a renewal of 5 more years. Okay. So I have never seen one not renewed. So
that's my point. How many could be allowed to just go off?
Probably half this list.
Okay, so you're thinking at least a couple of $1 million.
$2 million. And again, this is, from what we can tell, part of the problem is that this kind of data is very hard to find. There is no one central repository for all these sorts of things because they're done in different ways. They're authorized by different bodies.
Right.
So really what the biggest part of my request last night was that the council as a governing body, I'm hoping they're going to take the responsibility of investigating and finding out what the real true list is. Because I have a feeling it's quite a bit more than this. And so let's get a real picture of what's out there.
All right, now this is just property taxes, and this is parish-wide property taxes. Okay, so that would include some of the TIF districts and whatever, but some of those are not done with property taxes. They're done with sales taxes. So there's even more revenue that might be coming in, at least to those municipalities.
Right.
They could be using that revenue if it weren't already given away. Now, they'll come back, the economic development people will come back and say, well, they might not have come if we hadn't given them this incentive, et cetera.
Well, I think the real issue there is that everybody understands and we buy into this economic development, and it sounds good, but here's the reality. We've been doing this for 30 years now, and we're out of money. Mm-hmm. We've economically developed ourselves into bankruptcy. And I don't know how
I'm only laughing because it hurts.
Well, and it's not just the parish. You know, they will claim, well, the next parish is doing it, so we got to do it. Well, if the other parish is going broke, should we follow them down that road? I'll give you one statistic that'll give you an idea of how bad this has gotten all over. The Louisiana budget this year is $29 billion. The amount of state share of that is about $20 billion. The rest is federal government grants. When Mike Foster was governor, he did one of the first economic development projects. When he was governor, the total amount of economic development loss in revenue from these development projects was $1.2 to $1.5 billion. Today, it's $12.5 billion.
Oh my gosh!
We exempt more in taxes from corporations and businesses than we take in.
Collect. So, I've seen that statistic, and I find it just incredible that they wouldn't correct that right up front.
So I was at the legislature this year, and we were lobbying, and one of the things I lobbied against was the film tax credits. And quite frankly, they were very ruthless. Mm-hmm. And the head of Louisiana Economic Development was saying that he was testifying for it, telling us we are losing 75 cents on the dollar. And yet he's talking about why this is a good thing. And, you know, in the legislature this year, not one removal of tax exemptions made it out of any committee. Not one.
It's incredible.
And yet the fight we had was, how can they lock in film tax credits for at least 10 more years, which they did.
Of course they did. If they didn't take off any exemption, there's so much low-hanging fruit out there, but somebody has a constituent who's attached to that low-hanging fruit, and they're not willing to give it up.
Well, and what we're seeing, too, is that, you know, when we look at it on the local level of what the kind of things we brought up last night, you know, one of the comments from the council was that, well, we don't really have any control over this kind of thing because a lot of it does come from the state through other programs. And that's just not the reality anymore. For example, the governor signed a new executive order that he put in place that I believe is already in place that says that when you come to a municipality with a tax exemption, it has to be approved now by the city, the sheriff, the school board,
so
and
all
I
of the
forget one other
taxing
entity. All the
entities.
taxing entities must approve it. So the answer now is that you can very easily say no. Just say no, and let's take that revenue that we're supposed to
But
be
isn't
getting.
it also true that if one of those objects, then it stays?
No,
I'm not exactly
I think
sure.
I think the issue is that the way it works is that person can be exempted. That millage
portion.
can be exempted
Okay.
if he does it. But what the governor said is in his order is, if not everybody signs off, I will not sign off. It must be everybody for me to sign it.
Well,
Now
that's-
he can get around it, and the Industrial Development Board, or the board that passed, Commerce and Industry Board, can still pass it, but he will not sign off. And I'm not sure what would happen
Well, that's what I,
if
that's what I
one
mean.
group said no, the others said yes, and the governor said no. My feeling is they would try and pass it anyway, because these things are passed on a daily basis all over the state. The total amount to the state right now in just this, in lost revenue, is $1.4 billion.
There's
per
your
year.
there's your fiscal cliff. Right
There's
there.
the fiscal cliff.
Right there. We have a call coming in. Joe, go ahead. You're on the Ross Report. Welcome, Joe.
Carolyn, I want to thank you for having these guests on. Been waiting to talk to these guys a long time. I think both of them ought to run for city council. What can we do as lay people to help you guys? Because I listened to the meeting and I was really impressed, Mr. Supple and Mr. Chapman. I apologize for the connection on my phone was a little bad, but I wanted to ask you, what can we do as private citizens to help? Because now that I'm hearing this, I was going to support the thing in the fall, but I'm voting no on everything. And also, I find the government, the local government, very hard. I've been trying to get the budget people to tell me what are the top 10 things that the parish is spending money on, and what are the top 10 things that the city is spending money on. Because I have a friend of mine, his nephew, is trying to write a term paper. So anyway, I want to thank y'all for taking my call, but what can we do to help you? And also, by the way, I think you're right. The state, we need to start standing up to the state so that they are not telling us we can't run our own affairs like with the property taxes down here. I think that's part of the problem. The state is handcuffing us, and I like the way you stood up on it, Mrs. Supple, and I hope you guys could run for council. I'd vote for you. God bless. Have a happy 4th.
Thank you, Joe. Thanks so much for the call. Go ahead, guys.
Well, thanks for that, but my wife won't vote for me, so I got that problem. But you're right, Joe. You know, one of the institutional problems we have is the way we tax property in Louisiana, which is set by the U.S. Constitution. So one of the things I've been trying to do is get enough people together to say, let us change the Constitution that's so that the parish, as in every other state, gets to set their own property tax. How we do it. Here's a simple formula we use here. Property, land, is taxed in Lafayette at about 1% of its value. Mm-hmm. The improvements or the building on that land is taxed at 1.5%. So if you improve property, your improvements have a higher property tax than the land it sits on proportionately. So that is backwards. That is totally backwards. So the thing we need to do is change that in Lafayette Parish to start with, because once we create an incentive for people to develop, they will do it on their own.
Exactly.
We don't need an economic development policy. We need an economic development tax structure.
Well, exactly, and it should be across the board. It shouldn't be all of these carve-outs and exemptions, which do nothing but erode trust in government. When you see a developer, a major developer, getting what they got from for the Costco development. Everybody thought Costco got no. The developer got that. To what was the exchange? Well, we're going to build you a road to relieve the traffic off Ambassador. You can't ride on that road. You can't go more than right behind those buildings because the road doesn't go all the way through, and because, as we've been told several times, I've been told by different sources that are very good sources, that the road will not be accepted by the city because it is not up to standard.
Well, I remember when they were doing that, and I remember one of the pitches that the developers made.
Yeah, you were one of the few in there with us, fighting it.
Yeah, it was we're going to relieve traffic on Ambassador Caffrey by 14%. And I said, did you tell Costco that? Less traffic, really?
Did you tell the people that? People are going to go where it's easier to go.
But the reality is Costco didn't get a penny.
No, Costco didn't get anything.
It was had nothing to do with Costco.
Right.
It was simply the ability to sell the land at a higher price. That's it.
And the only reason we knew about the agricultural exemption for the remainder of the undeveloped is because of the lawsuit that was filed between the developer and the landowner. And that's the only reason. Yeah,
that's the interesting part about that particular one. The property taxes were $180 a year on 60 acres.
Because it was classed agricultural.
Because it was classed agriculture. And then when we got the development, the property taxes were zero.
And then the folks who owned the land were not happy with something that the developer was doing. And in order to put a value on the land, they had been claiming agricultural up to this point, but of course to get the full value of the land after the Costco development, well, they had to value it what it really, really is. Right. So that's now what they're paying. They're paying the real property tax value instead of the agricultural. But it was funny that it took a lawsuit between the developer and the landowner to even bring that out. No one knew that was going on until that happened. Yeah, we have some 5,000 acres of agricultural land within the city limits of Lafayette, Penn, averaging an appraised value of appraisal value of under this law of about $180 an acre. All right, people, we have to take a break right now. We're with Tim Supple and Adam Chapman, both gentlemen who made presentations last night at the fact-finding meeting, and it was fascinating. I recorded it because I couldn't go, and I think I told you I wasn't going to be able to go, but I am telling you, when I saw these guys making a presentation that they made, I don't think anybody expected anybody to go there that well prepared, and they were, and as you can tell right now, they are. So if you have questions, 232-1542. For you. Okay, we're back on. Oh, you wouldn't believe the conversation off the air. We get in big trouble if you heard it. Anyway, we're going to stick to the numbers here because the numbers are startling, just startling. Tim Supple and Adam Chapman in studio with us. If you saw the presentation last night, good for you. If you didn't, it's going to open your eyes because before they come back to us for another dime, you need to hear what these two gentlemen have come up with and the amount of money that we're leaving on the table right now. Adam, you want to go into that in a little more detail? Well, I kind of want to speak to what the caller said. Joe called in, and he's asking, what can we do? And I think the biggest part of this is awareness. And, this is the not-so-sexy side of these projects, and that's always tough. The boring numbers, It's the numbers, and it makes it sound like, folks like us are against the development or they're against these businesses, and we're not. They're all great places. Costco is a great business. They pay their employees well. They've got quality products. They pay lots of sales taxes. But that's not the point. The point is, if they're a good business and they're a multi-billion-dollar business, why can't they do this on their own? Why do we need to help anybody? Exactly. And in truth, if they didn't receive any of that money, we didn't help them. They were going to come anyway. They were going to come anyway, and frankly, they don't get the money. Right. It's the developer who gets the money. So when they start doing these things, and so often it's crony capitalism, pure and simple, and it's what's going to kill this country and it's going to kill this state. It already is. You look at the transfer of wealth from the state of Louisiana to local governments that shouldn't be transferred. Water, clean water, that's a humanitarian issue. Other than that, I question a lot of these things, a lot of these contracts. Well, and I think for the everyday guy who's wondering what they can do, you've got to keep asking these questions. There are very few people who want to ask these questions to find out what's really going on. And it's not that this is some grand conspiracy or criminal enterprise. These things really are done with the best intentions. They are, and maybe that's scarier than. And the road to hell is paved with what. Right. You think these are good things, and maybe they're not. And I think most people would also be surprised to see the list of names that are the names that are on this list. Costco's just one big example, but you're going to recognize every one of these businesses that are on this list. And there's nothing wrong with them. These are good people. These are great businesses. But we're giving breaks to some and not others, which is a problem. And we're giving breaks that we can't afford to give. Exactly. Mike in Rain. Go ahead, Mike. You're on the Ross Report with Tim and Adam.
Thanks, Carol. Tim, Adam, I really like what you guys are saying. Two things. First, I'd like to know more about your company, and please give a website or some way to find out more about that. And my question is, did I understand you correctly in saying that it would make sense for every parish to have their own taxing structure that would fit that parish. And I'd like to investigate that. And my motivation is kind of like yours, is simply as a businessman. I get so tired of seeing government entities run, well, they're not run on any business model that I could discern. And a guy named Boone Pickens preached one time, either get in politics or get out of business. And I see you guys have taken his advice. I appreciate it. I'll hang up and listen to you.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, well, the state constitution sets the way that assessors can value property and how and how they do that evaluation. But basically, the real deal is that just like the land we talked about on Collie Saloon Road, where Costco is now, because it was deemed agricultural, it was deemed as worth $180 an acre at the time, when in truth it was worth, whatever it was, $500,000 an acre. So the state sets that. So what I'm proposing and trying to get people behind is, why should the state set that? Mm-hmm. Why not let the parishes decide? And at the overall across-the-board rule I like is everybody is taxed in the same way at the same rate. Mm-hmm. It's really simple. And so exemptions sound good, but exemptions go against the grain of free market and orderly development.
All right, now let's look at one exemption, the homestead exemption, because that is a state-mandated exemption, but the state doesn't have a property tax. So it is really an exemption that's imposed on the parishes, correct?
Right, absolutely. That's it. It's strictly, the parish is the one who eats that.
You're saying just allow all the parishes to set their own homestead exemption if they choose?
Well,
that's an interesting concept, Tim.
What we have is we have a situation where you cannot change the valuations of property in your parish. Mm-hmm. If you give you an example is that just the property that we're talking about? Really, $180 an acre?
Right, but now these are businesses, so they don't get homestead exemption.
Right,
that homestead exemption only applies to residential.
Yeah,
right.
And we're not talking about that side of it.
You're talking about strictly the business side.
We're talking about strictly the business side.
Okay.
And look, I'm a semi-recent purchaser of my first home, so I'm taking advantage of that right now. And that kind of brings up another point to what really makes this conversation hard, is that a lot of people are going to focus on who's getting what and well, you're getting it, so you can't be asking for these changes. But the thing we really like to see is let's take it away from everybody easily. And this isn't a penalty. This is just sort of the reset button on the whole thing.
When you look at the way it's done, I mean, we get a lot of calls on this show about everybody calls it the Costco development, when Costco didn't get any of that. But that has really driven a lot of resentment from a lot of people. And you can understand why. You have thousands of mom and pop businesses in this town that never got anything and feel kind of beaten down by the tax structure and by the way they're treated.
Or they feel tired with the new job they have because they got run out of business.
Exactly.
Because a store like that, again, is a great place. They sell everything and anything you can dream of.
They can really hurt a lot of small local businesses. So if they're going to do that, if they're going to hurt some small local businesses, why would you give them a tax exemption, or why would they be able to take advantage
and again,
of it?
we're not paying the price directly to Costco because they did not reap the specific benefit.
They didn't get it.
But we are all paying the price in the loss of the property tax, which we have to argue for when the ballot comes around to support a school board tax or to support a drainage tax that everybody keeps talking about.
And look at the TIF districts that are funded with a sales tax exemption or an additional sales tax, or like the one in North Lafayette, the Target TIF. Right, they got a give back from the state. That'll never happen again. I mean, that will never happen again, and those people are paying an additional penny. So even the cap on sales tax doesn't apply to them because you know what they did. Very clever, huh? Any special taxing district is not subject to the cap. That's my understanding.
Yeah, I don't know if they have a cap. I also, I like special taxing districts and the ability that if people want to tax themselves, to develop their
tax
district.
Themselves more,
right,
but not take away.
Right. If they want to tax themselves more, and I'll bring up this morning, the Urban Land Institute presented a redevelopment for downtown Lafayette.
Okay, can we wait to get into that?
Yes,
Because we
okay.
have a call coming in.
All
I want to take this call, and I want to fully explore this.
Okay, go ahead.
Because I do, if you guys can hold over into the next hour, I mean, because I think we have a lot more to talk about,
Okay.
including that. All right, Jerry, go ahead. You're on the Ross Report with Tim Supple and Adam Chapman. Welcome.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of interesting features in this conversation. There's just a few that I disagree with these gentlemen's findings. It's not saying that they're inaccurate. It's just the direction of it, as if we can treat each piece of parcel of land equally. I'm not defending Costco because I can't stand that whole situation. But what I can tell you is that they keep hollering about people in the parish and land not paying their fair share, whatever. The thing is, if you have 20 acres of inherited property from Dad's farm, and all you can grow out there is hay, and there's no improvements, you can't sell it for more than what that old raggedy land is worth. But then when you have to develop it and then go apply for a permit to make that commercial to make it worth something, or residential, there's many, many hundreds of thousands of dollars of engineering involved before there's ever a shovel put on that ground. So that needs to go in step with what the reality is that I don't want people in the parish to lose their family land because they can't afford more than $180 an acre. But my fair assumption would be if it only grows grass, it should only be worth $180 an acre. Thanks.
Well, I'll say this. I absolutely agree with you.
Yeah, that's...
If your land's worth $180 an acre, that's all you should pay in property taxes. We're in agreement on that.
But
So,
what we're talking about is the stuff that's classified agricultural that's worth a heck of a lot more.
Well, and it's about the true value of the property that you're talking about. And as the city expands and grows and these different areas pop up and new developments, the value is going to naturally grow. So that's when, somebody like Jerry would be paying more in taxes. So this is not a penalty on those that already own. It's just leveling the playing field to let the market decide what's worth what.
And you give me the signal when we need to take a break. But there's one thing I want to bring up because that relates to this is because the islands of unincorporated property within, totally surrounded by city property, receiving city services and not paying the taxes. So I have a real problem with that. Have you all had a chance to look at any of that? Because it seems to me, I know that that up until now, municipalities have been shy to go out and simply take in that property because right now state law pretty much says it has to be a certain number of electors and residents to sign on to come in. But it seems to me that if it's totally surrounded by city, it's being served by the city, why shouldn't it be inside the city paying taxes?
Well, I agree with you, Carol. You know, what happened is 10 years ago, when Mr. Durrell and them came into office, and even before that, I should say, we got into an annexation war with Broussard and Youngsville and the other ones because they didn't join consolidated government.
Right.
So Broussard said, watch this, we're going to give a TIF, and we're going to build Walmart. And we're going to, because it was farmland, we're going to give a TIF, we're going to help build it, and we're going to collect a ton of sales taxes, which, of course, is going to compete against any sales in Lafayette. Mm-hmm. So the annexation war started.
Yeah.
And we annexed and annexed and annexed. And so we've stripped the unconsolidated area of any revenue.
Value. Yeah.
So because the cities took it. The cities took it by just adding more and more land. Mm-hmm. Because they would add land if you would develop it. And I tell you, I've seen it a million times.
We do have a problem with that charter, and that is a basic problem that I don't think we're going to solve anything until we solve that charter. We
were kind of surprised that last night during this discussion, so many people brought that up. There were only a handful of folks that spoke, including us, but a number of them were talking about the charter and consolidation. I hadn't really thought about that approach, but it seems like we've finally reached a point where the situation has become dire enough that maybe that is a serious, and that's such a bigger beast to tackle that nobody really wants to talk about.
But the little beasts,
but it's becoming more of a reality.
The little beasts are not going to be solved until we get the big beasts solved. And I've been saying that for years, and as I like to call it in my highly technical jargon, that cockamamie hybrid form of government that we have. All right, Michael, go ahead. You're on the Ross Report with Tim and Adam.
Yes, ma'am. 2 quick points. First off, where can we buy land at $180 an acre, much less $1,000 an acre in this state? There's no such animal. And the second part is, my mom's 80 years old. We've got 5 acres between Cecilia and Arnaville. We're on the Bayou Teche side, which is the ditch, and they access it at $50,000 an acre on that side, but across the street it's $1,000 an acre.
Right.
So this thing's totally upside down and wiped out.
Right. Well, your mom needs to put some goats on her yard.
Get a tractor.
If we bring the taxes down, I would do it.
You try it.
Start baling some hay.
Start baling some hay. You know,
There you
it's
go.
going to cost you. You're going to lose money on it, but it doesn't matter. You get out of your property taxes, and that's exactly what happens. You are hitting the point dead on.
And that's St. Martin Parish, correct?
Right. It doesn't matter which parish it is in the state.
It's all crazy. All right, we got to take a break. Brett, hang on. We'll get to you right after the break. We're with Tim Supple and Adam Chapman on the Ross Report. 232-1542, the number to call. All right, 1, 2, 3. We're talking numbers today with Tim Supple and Adam Chapman. They did an outstanding analysis of property tax exemptions, et cetera. Made that presentation last evening. If you missed it, that's why we're doing it on the Ross Report today. Brett, go ahead. You're on the Ross Report with Tim and Adam.
Hey,
welcome.
Carol, how you doing?
Great, thanks.
Carol, I think the baseline of all of this issue comes down to honesty and credibility. Because if we go back when the Durrell administration couldn't get the money that they wanted in tax revenue, they put out speed bans and they put in traffic cameras. Then they get into this scheme to where that whole block of Costco and Field and Stream is tax-free for, 10 years? Multi-billion-dollar corporations are tax-free for 10 years. Then we got the school board who wants more money after they lie about their figures, their benefits, everything else, and then they retaliate against the retired teachers and pull their insurance. So the public, I think, has caught on to the lack of credibility and honesty in all of these organizations when it comes to tax money.
Brett, I think you're making a point there, and I think Adam and Tim have very clearly laid out why there is so little trust in government. You said it, and they've said it too. When you have so many different ways of valuing things based on, well, sometimes it is who you know, or based on who comes up with some great idea for bringing in more tax dollars.
And people, you know, Carol,
people lose sight.
Very interesting. The situation in Lafayette, why is Lafayette land so much more expensive than everywhere else? You just go across a parish line, and the property values change dramatically, and that goes back to what your partners on the show are saying, that there's no rhyme or reason for how this is done. But my big issue was, don't come to me as the taxpayer with your hand out when a multi-billion-dollar corporation like Costco is sitting there tax-free for 10 years.
Well, they're not tax-free for 10 years, really. They aren't, are they?
Who?
The developer got the tax break. I don't think tax.
Well, yeah, the no property taxes are being charged on the land.
On the land. On
So
the
therefore,
land.
on the land.
They're paying sales taxes. And
They pay sales taxes.
And
Right.
they're paying
But the
their
difference goes
employees.
into their lease.
Wait, let me back up. They're not paying sales tax. They're not paying property taxes on the land or the improvements on that land.
Oh, okay. They aren't?
No.
Not even on the improvements?
No.
Okay. All
No.
right. I stand corrected. I thought it was just on
No, not just the land. Also the improvements.
Which, as we talked about earlier, is more than the land.
And what's crazy about it is Conrad Como, to his credit, was at that meeting of
Yes.
by the way, everybody remember, Industrial Development Board. It's just a fig leaf for people to give away your money, period. That's what it is. And that's what they did. And so Conrad was the only one there who said, and even Charlie Lungley, who has admitted he loves TIFs.
Right.
But he said, a TIF, that's one thing. He said, but a pilot, you're giving it away up front? You crazy.
Right.
You know?
Well, you know, that was something, again, that came up last night about what can the council do, or what can we do locally. And that board is a perfect example of one that has that authority unchecked.
And shouldn't.
They're not, I was on that board for only a few months. After, the Costco deal came around, I made an effort to join. I got on the board, and unfortunately there were no other projects going on.
Projects because unless Greg Gautreaux comes to the IBD, which is his little fig leaf, then, and I love Greg. I think he's a great guy. I really do. I like the guy. I have no quarrel with the things Lita has done. But that thing, and they keep trying to give away. They tried to do this with Glenn Stewart and the Park Lafayette. You remember what a Donnybrook that was? Because those numbers didn't work either, a 300-room hotel over there. They're having problems right now over there. So, people, don't check your business sense at the door when somebody comes to you with a bright, shiny little project that you don't think the numbers just won't work. I mean, if the marketplace isn't going to take a chance on this, why should government invest in it?
Well, and that was the point we made, and again, what can people do? Ask your councilman to say no to the next project that comes up, because again, the council is not the one responsible for those kinds of projects or for the things that the IDB brings forward, but they do endorse them, and they endorsed that other project before. Maybe it wouldn't make a difference if they said no. Maybe it could still go forward. But, we'd like to see the council saying, I'm sorry, this just doesn't add up.
Well,
and we don't think it makes
really
sense.
looking at the numbers for a change
Right.
instead of just taking whatever these people tell you.
Well, what the council can do is the council are ones that appoint the people on the board. So you
There
appoint
you
people
go.
on the board that understand.
There you go.
It's real simple. It's real simple.
And you talk about boards and commissions all over the state. How about the boards and commissions in Lafayette Parish that
Yes.
actually do answer to the council?
Yeah.
One that comes to mind is the Airport Commission. And I've been doing some research about that. I mean, they answer to the council. Somebody needs to look at their budgets, LCVC, all these. I mean, I have no quarrel with the work that they do. I'm just saying that at some point the buck has to stop somewhere. Right. That if they are not really being very judicious with the taxpayer money, what the heck? Somebody has to be able to stand up.
Well, that's probably the biggest problem of it all is in how do we determine what's working and what's not, and nobody's come up with that formula. If you ask some people, it's going to be in the GDP of Lafayette, but really that's irrelevant because that's not what we do our business with.
No, and
we got to operate as a business who has revenue and spends that revenue, and there's no accountability for what it's actually providing. The thing that's the hardest part in all of this, and it's very frustrating on a personal level, to talk to your friends or your colleagues that may think differently on this, is that every one of these projects looks great and is great. They're going to make, build, revitalize a cool thing, a cool place to eat, a neat business, a nice shopping center. They are awesome, they look cool, and they make Lafayette sound amazing. But if in reality they aren't providing anything other than the marketing value of existing, how do we justify the continued spending to get those things?
Well said. Couldn't said it better. Paul, go ahead. You're on the Ross Report. Welcome, Paul.
Well, thank you. Y'all are hitting the nail on the head so hard. And in talking to your point regarding the council, number one, you got to elect the right council people. They're going to appoint the right people to these boards. That's very important to do that, and we haven't seen that. The second thing is when this Costco deal went through, there was a vote by the council to approve it, and during the course of the process, one of the promises made by the developers and Costco was that a new police precinct would be built out there in that property, and that's not happening. We don't see that anywhere. That was supposed to be one of the gains by the taxpayers. And that was made a promise at the council meeting. The last time that was looked into on that by one of the councilmen, they were told that, well, that was a promise made to Joey Durrell, so it's not going to happen.
There you see that. I mean, really, and there were 3 council members who voted against the Costco development, and that would be the predictable ones that William Theriault, Jared Ballard, and I believe Kevin Naucan was the third one.
Naucan, right.
Yes, right. Exactly. So
what I think is most interesting about the Costco development is in this. I was on the Comprehensive Planning Commission, and I won't go into my problems there, but I will say this: the same month.
You mean wait a minute? That's the $1.2 million Plan Lafayette.
Yeah.
That is being continually amended.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
Go ahead, anyway, this very same month that they passed that, which had a target on that Costco property for no more box stores on this property. It was
specifically diagrammed,
specifically
in the plan.
Targeted.
with a picture of it.
Yeah,
and
with a
we
picture
like our
of the
little tax
property.
break, but we don't want anybody else to get the same thing.
So they said the comprehensive plan, the plan was no more box stores specifically on this property. It's got to be mixed use. It's got to be something else. The same month, the same people
gave the tax
gave
break.
the Costco
The
for
irony.
planning and zoning and the parish and comprehensive. It's so I say this, and I do say it with some reservation, but I will say this: it's us. It's our fault, and it's our friends. It's our friends and neighbors. We have to be willing to say to them, "No, we're not going to do that for you."
Somebody's got to be willing
And
to
it's
say
very
no.
hard.
It is.
It's very hard to say to these are
Especially-
people I know and I like. They're friends of mine. And they say, well, and I tell them all the time, I get them. I get some of these kinds of breaks. I get film tax credits. I buy them. I'm against them. So
But you're going to take advantage of them if they're there, right?
Yeah, you will take
That's
advantage.
the
You can call
problem.
me a hypocrite if you want, but there are very few of us out there who say, take mine away too. Stop it.
Joyce, go ahead. You're on the Ross Report with Tim and Adam.
Hey, how are you doing, Carol? Listen,
Great.
I just wanted to review a little bit. The Tea Party, if you remember, was very instrumental in defeating the TIF tax on Park. I think it's Park
Lafayette. Yes, exactly. We had that big
a
meeting.
gentleman called in and asked, what can we as citizens do? Well, the number one thing that we did on that TIF was educate ourselves and educate our members as to what a TIF was, because I didn't even know what it was, and I started reading about it. So once we found out, we knew that it wouldn't be good for Lafayette. And if you recall, you were involved too. We worked with a committee, and we contacted the hotel managers and owners that were here already and explained to them what was going on. And then they contacted the Lafayette Consolidated Government Council members individually. And that's how that was defeated. But, again, I don't know, is it the gentleman that was talking, and he said, well, it's our fault. But, truthfully, I sort of resent that comment, because it is to a degree we don't get involved, or some people don't. But let me say this. We elect these people to represent us the best that we can be represented. And then they spend our money unwisely. So we need to vote them out. I mean, the Costco that was going to go through because of the families that were involved. They had a lot of power, so it went through. But we opposed that also.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now
we were the
school
few.
board wants money, and they need taxes. Well, tell them to go to Costco.
Yeah, that's what we say. Go to Costco. And look, I apologize. I don't mean when I say it's
I don't
our
want to
fault.
demonize any one
I'm just,
company.
Yeah, I'm meaning that in a very euphemistic fashion. I'm meaning that as a general rule,
Right.
as a general public, that generally the public doesn't know this stuff. If they knew it,
These little
they would
things
be
go
against
on
it.
all over Lafayette Parish. The reason Costco is so egregious is because it was such
It's a big brand name. It's easy for everybody to recognize.
It's not
right?
just a big brand name. It was such an obvious giveaway. Because why in heaven's name would you consider, supposedly TIFs and pilots were blighted areas that needed a little help and would return to the coffers of the government. That's no blighted area. That's a valuable piece of property. And why we would give up anything on that valuable piece of property is beyond me.
Right.
We going to have some time when we come back? No, little bitty. Okay, because there are so many other things to get into. Like, anybody remember the name Uptown Lofts? Oh, yeah. We want to revisit that, and then we're going to get into what's going on downtown. So stay with us. It's going to get even hotter on the Ross Report. Well, welcome back. We have Tim Supple, Adam Chapman. Both gentlemen did some outstanding research and made that presentation to the council last night, and we wanted to share it with you today. We have just a short period here. Adam, you wanted to add something before we go after the top of the hour? We're going to come back and get into the downtown situation.
Well, one of the last callers was asking about what we do and how does the council handle these sorts of things. And I just wanted to note that last night when we shared this information with them, I was very pleased with the reaction. So I do want to say that. And I think that the council is going to take this seriously. They asked some great questions. They were curious about, where this came from and how it works. So I see this as a great opportunity. And again, I encourage people to encourage their council person to help us really get the full scope of what this all involves.
Yeah,
The comprehensive look at what do we have out there. We don't have to talk about anything else. Let's just find out what we've got out there. And I think the council seemed like they were committed to doing that. So I'm very happy with that.
Well, I think that kind of was a brilliant move on your part, because who would have thought, to really assess all of these exemptions and really show how they materially affect the income, of the parish. And while they're talking about it, it's pretty amazing.
Right.
The breakdown. And Bruce did a good job, I thought, laying out where the property taxes go now, the breakdown, and how the school board is the major beneficiary. Almost 40% of all taxes in Lafayette Parish go to the school board, and they still want more. And I'll tell you the truth, I believe that's what hurt those 2 millage renewals that I don't think are outrageous, and I think they are needed, and I voted for them, even though many of my anti-tax friends did not, because they're just sick of the whole thing, and I don't blame them. But I voted because I know how needed they were. But I think putting that school board tax on at the same time was such a detriment to those two. It was such a backlash that they got caught up in it as well.
Right.
And the almost 40% going just to the school board. I think consolidated government gets in the neighborhood of 28%. Yeah. And that's to run the whole parish. Now, mind you, the school board is running a population of about 35,000. Between the employees and the students, et cetera. That's about 35,000 people. Granted, they have a lot of facilities that they have to keep up, but still, 40% of the property taxes go to them, 28% to consolidated government, about 19% to the sheriff. So that doesn't seem to be a very fair breakdown, and there are a lot of hard issues that are going to be faced because the parish has got to be faced. So we'll get back to two things, basically: the charter, fixing the charter, and what's going to be going on downtown with this new study from the Urban Land Institute. So we want people to stay with us. I believe it's going to open your eyes a whole bunch. We're so pleased to have Tim Supple and Adam Chapman with iLandmen in studio with us. They've done great work, and we're going to try to get all this information out to you so you can be better informed and better armed to go to your council and ask them to be more accountable. Stay with us on the Ross Report, 232-1542. We always have a line for you.
Dialing it in from the right side of the galaxy with a serious dose of truth, justice, and freedom to have fun.
All right.
This is the Ross Report.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, well, now. We're having a great Friday, and it's all thanks to our friends at Service Chevrolet Cadillac. We really appreciate those folks over there. They made a big investment in this community, and they do so much for the community in so many ways. And one of the nice things they do is give us a great selection of Chevy cars, trucks, SUVs, and Cadillacs, amazing Cadillacs, and so easy to get to. 1214 Ambassador Caffrey Parkway, right there off I-10. Oh, my goodness. I think they have over 600 SUVs. I think that's what they have in stock, something like that. It's really amazing, the selection that they have, but it's even more amazing, the deals, and nothing like the service after the sale at, well, that's why it's their first name, Service Chevrolet Cadillac. Go over there to see what they've got for you. By the way, you can check them out online, servicegm.com or Cadillac@service.com. And we're grateful to them, very grateful to Service Chevrolet Cadillac. We're back in the studio with Tim Supple and Adam Chapman. We're talking about taxes, exemptions, et cetera. And for those of you who didn't get to the meeting last night and actually didn't even watch it, I recorded it, and I was so blown away by these guys. I had to have them come in, and we thought we were going to do this for 1 hour. We're holding them over for another hour, and we're so thankful because they have done amazing research. Adam, you wanted to wrap up with something that some folks also looked at the exemptions, and they said we're giving up even more exemptions than you guys had found.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. This was another piece that I shared last night. This is from Together Louisiana, which is I'm not sure what you call them,
group.
a giant coalition of religious organizations and some nonprofits,
right,
who may have some other motives for what they want to do this research for. But the point is they are looking at the exact same type of information that we do. So I shared this with the council last night, and according to their study, which is maybe even more comprehensive. The number that we're looking at is closer to $5 million, $4.7 million of exempted property tax revenue. And what's particularly interesting about this piece is that they broke it down according to the percentages of the millages by the different entities in the city. And so that's what we see here. So as an example of what is lost, when it comes to these things, the real world numbers of what is missing, the school districts is probably the biggest one. $1.8 million is what it cost the school board directly. That's as apples to apples per year. That's
Think
as good
of
of a
all the
comparison
buildings
as we
and
can
the
get.
walkways they could build, right?
Sure.
So there you go. I mean, this is how these things materially affect the impact the impact they have on our quality of life.
Very real.
On the ability to run these organizations. Look at the roads and bridges. Drainage.
Right.
Drainage is one of the biggest problems we have. And as Bruce Conk pointed out last night, that whole fund is being starved. It's not anywhere near what it should be, considering the problems we have with flooding, et cetera. We've got Andy coming in. Andy, go ahead. You're on the Ross Report with Tim Supple and Adam Chapman.
Yeah, Carol, regarding that Costco tax and that vote, that was Andy Narcan that voted against it, not Kevin Narcan.
Oh, it was Andy. You're right. Sorry, Andy Narcan.
Right.
Kevin Narcan has never met a tax he didn't like.
Yeah.
And
Sorry
also,
about that.
And also,
Thank you.
If the council body and the powers that be would look hard at the revenues they collect, such as the library, there's so much money coming into the library and sitting in surplus. If some of that would be allowed to be voted on and redirected to drainage, it sure would help a lot. The library is probably sitting on $15 million in surplus. It's sitting there to be spent on new buildings. And once they build these new buildings, we also have to pay to maintain all that. Drive by the library on a Saturday night at 10 o'clock, and all the lights are on. There's nobody inside that building.
Andy.
Every light that building's on.
Andy, you mean the one downtown?
On by Liney Bell Road, the South Side Library.
Oh, the South Side.
Yeah, the one on Liney Bell, the Youngsville Library.
Youngsville.
We don't have these libraries. They're so lit up. It's ridiculous.
Now
That's
they're
27.
Andy, their building plan is pretty much complete, right? They have the North Library, the South Library.
No, they
Right.
have one in Scott yet to be done.
But is that the last one?
It's supposed to be, as far as I know.
Right. So from here, after that, it'll be maintenance, correct?
Correct. It should be. But, there's so much money sitting in that fund that
Right.
it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I've heard
If
that.
the drainage, it would help.
Well, I know, and people in the recreation area are starving for money too, and they look at that library reserve fund. But
Carol, we also have a lot of parks that really aren't in major use. And
agreed.
we're just paying to maintain.
Agreed.
So why not sell those parks? Put them into the economy where they're going to be bringing money back in tax.
What about all the school board Section 16 land? You could put that into and someone was talking about why is the land so much cheaper in surrounding parishes as opposed to Lafayette. One of the reasons is we're a very small parish, so there's not a lot of land in Lafayette. Another reason is, and I worked for these things, and I think we did a good job in building our amenities, making us a more attractive area to come to, a more attractive city to come to. But at some point, you got to look at the infrastructure. You look at the basics. You've got to be a little more flexible. And all I hear about is now the fluff. I want the roads and the drainage.
Yeah. Not to mention, Carol, not that I'm not against the animal control,
right?
But there was that tax vote. You split two taxes into three. And what has been done on animal control with that money yet?
Well,
I have not heard of any plans moving forward for new buildings, number one. Number two is, why wasn't that mosquito money that was been in surplus used for drainage? That drainage will get rid of mosquitoes. It only makes sense to do things like that.
You're just making too much sense, Andy. You have to listen. You have to stop making sense, Andy. It doesn't work in government. You know that.
Yeah, but yet they use that money to pay off a waste.
The waste transfer station. Yeah,
lawsuit, right? Because of mosquitoes. But yet they can't do that to fix drainage.
You can rationalize anything, can't you? Andy, thanks for
That's amazing, Carol.
Thank you so much. Okay, have a great one. All right, now we wanted to get back to finishing up with the meeting you went to this morning. We've pretty much covered the exemptions and how crazy these exemptions are in a lot of ways. They all sounded good, et cetera, but we know we have to do something about that. And so I really appreciate the information that you've shared with the council and with us. But now you went to a meeting this morning because now we have the Urban Land Institute. And we continually have these people. First, they go to Lincoln, Nebraska. They go to Oklahoma City. They go to Charleston, South Carolina. They go to Pittsburgh, and they bring back these ideas, and then they bring in the experts from outside, the out-of-town experts, the suits, as we call them. And they come in and they make all these recommendations that don't seem to square away with reality. What did you hear this morning?
Well, this was a perfect segue from what Andy just said, and you mentioned it, the quality of life that we're representing here in Lafayette. Parks and things like that are underfunded right now, and I know that the quandary of designated funds and what you can do with them, that's a whole nother animal that we don't want to get into. But that quality of life is the biggest thing that we always talk about. What are we offering to attract people here? Mm-hmm. And I know we talk about it all the time in our business because we're a software business that needs highly skilled technical people, and there are not a lot of those in this area. So what is Lafayette doing to draw them in? And that's often the driving force behind these economic development things. So, when you go to those other cities and see these beautiful things, I mean, I know it. I spent some time in Oklahoma City last year, and I was blown away at how beautiful it was downtown and all the surrounding areas. And I think, man, that would be awesome. That would be fantastic if we had some that quality of a lifestyle. But how did they pay for it? Which I think they tax themselves. And how are we trying to pay for it? Which is to give away this money, and it's just a different method. But the result that they're hoping for is this big, beautiful, marketable rainbow in the sky. And
so
that's
we're talking about the federal courthouse, particularly as an anchor, a residential anchor.
Right, and we just learned about this last week from the Independence article that the mayor and the council were taking a hard look at the courthouse downtown, and so. Discovered that they brought in this panel from the outside panel of experts to come in and talk about this and kind of give us an assessment. They also interviewed 90 or 100 local stakeholders as part of this process to figure out, what's our vision for this courthouse. And I think that's the thing that really scares me the most is that this idea of vision really has overpowered everything else that we do. And it's something you cannot put a dollar amount on, and you can't compare apples to apples. But, Tim likes to make fun of me, call me a millennial. I'm some stinking millennial who wants puppies and rainbows and sidewalks.
A unicorn.
But, when it comes to this kind of stuff, I'm afraid he's kind of right. We've got this idea of utopia in our minds that I don't know where it came from.
Bike paths and it's sustainable, right?
And you know what? Those are all wonderful things, but what are we willing to sacrifice for those things? So today's presentation that we went to, coincidentally, the day after we go to this budget review meeting was about the courthouse downtown and this institute, offering these recommendations of what to do with it. Which the gist of it is that it hasn't been in commerce for so long. We're holding on to it for what reason? We can't really put our finger on. Maybe it's because we think we need a new courthouse. We aren't sure what to do with this one.
But we want residential downtown.
But we've got this idea of residential living downtown.
Exactly. And some of the people who have had residential living downtown have gotten out of residential living downtown. We have a lot of residences in what's classified officially as the downtown area. The question is, who wants to live down there? And how do they want to live? And
who can afford to live down there? That's the only question, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, we've seen these development attempts before. The location that I think now is the beer garden was a proposed site of a condo development that there were attempted pre-sales for, but the price
didn't work
because of the restrictions is so astronomical. It's just not reality.
All right. Now, I mentioned earlier Uptown Lofts because when you reviewed that, and Tim, I know you were involved in that. We were all involved in it. We're still waiting for a ruling from the ethics board on Mr. Gashassan, who was deeply involved in that and has been fined a major amount of money because of some of the shenanigans that went on with that. It turns out that Uptown Lofts, which is in trouble now, I understand. It started out as Joie de Vivre, and now it's Uptown Lofts. And as far as I know, that cost over $200 a square foot when it came down to it because of the money spent on that. So what are we talking about? Is it going to be the same thing here?
Well, the Uptown Lofts is a noble idea for low-income housing. However, I've never believed in building low-income housing, which I don't have a problem with, in building it in low-income areas. In fact, the Supreme Court has now ruled you can't do this anymore. In the last 2 years, since that got done, the Supreme Court has said you cannot build low-income housing in low-income areas. You're not accomplishing the goal we started with. So what has happened is because people don't want them to build low-income housing in high-income areas, they've been building them where they can, and the developers made money. I mean, Gotcha Sam made $1 million, which I have no problem with. I'm not spiting him. The attorneys made another $600,000, and LPTFA made $1 million. But the thing is, they could have bought an apartment complex in River Ranch cheaper, and we could. And that was my problem with it. My problem is when you spent $245 a square foot to house low-income people for the same $18 million, we could have bought 140 units.
$240
a square foot. That was probably at the time the most expensive apartment complex built in Lafayette.
Supposedly for low income.
It is, yeah, supposedly for low income, and that's fine. But you could have housed twice as many low income people if you had just stopped.
Yeah,
and quit trying to make this. And part of the reason is, I will say this is all part of the idea that this will help downtown Lafayette. Well, the problem is it's not economical. It hasn't helped downtown Lafayette. It's not going to help downtown Lafayette because here are the real numbers, Carol. The real numbers are to build what they want to build in downtown Lafayette is almost 50% higher than it will cost anywhere else in the parish.
Why?
Because of the restrictions that they're putting on it and what they want to build. So here's a number. Today, with all good intentions, the Urban Land Institute suggested we demolish or redo the old federal courthouse on Jefferson Street. Mm-hmm. I have been suggesting them to sell it. Tear it down, get out of it. But today's plan is this. They want to get a public-private partnership, which means government subsidized. That's all it means at the end of the day.
Right. We get left holding the bag, they get the profit.
Well, that's right. And so the idea is that somehow they'll raise $3 million. The city will put up $3 million. And they'll raise $3 million from tax credits, and they'll get a guy to put up $5 or $6 million, and they'll get a bank loan for the rest. But based on the $35 million number they gave us, it will cost $221 a square foot, which means it will be the most expensive complex in Lafayette. Now, why?
I'm only laughing because it hurts,
Why? Why would you do that? And the idea is that this will be the catalyst. It's not a catalyst. The market has already told you what the rent can be downtown. Mm-hmm. It's spoken. You cannot subsidize something into a viable market. The market tells you the rent's not there. You see the people who tried to start it, who did lofts downtown, tried it, right? Mm-hmm. How'd that work out? Mm-hmm. Well, because they had too much money in it. It's really simple. This will be no different. Now, will it work? Yeah, if you don't have to make a profit and the government subsidizes and eats the losses. Is it the catalyst? No, because it doesn't matter because the place next door still has the same problem.
Oh, boy, yes.
They are not going to get it. River Ranch, right now, you can look at condos in River Ranch. They're going for about $200 a square foot to $190 a square foot, somewhere in that range, right?
Mm-hmm. About $200.
Your cost here is going to be $275 a square foot. I mean, $221 a square foot. So that means
you're going to have to charge.
So that means if you have a 1,200 square foot, 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment downtown, the construction cost will be $275,000. Now, you tell me which millennials or which young people can afford that, and you tell me which people who are old enough to afford it, who have 2 kids, are going to do that.
Okay, Carl.
Yes, ma'am.
Carl, go ahead. You're on the Ross Report. I'm speechless. Go ahead, Carl.
Why is it that every time there's a new project that comes into town, like they wanted to revitalize downtown, the Four Corners area, they have to get an out-of-town consultant company, people who don't know our culture, people who don't know how we live or whatever. When you have a college like UL that has an architect department, engineering department, civil engineering, graphic design, or whatever, they could work with the university, possibly do some means of a exit project for these seniors and stuff, and probably wouldn't cost them nothing. Instead of spending tons of money for people who don't know how we live, and half the time it's a big failure, but it's a spend of a whole lot of money, taxpayers' money at that. And what does it do? They accomplish nothing.
Yeah.
Number two, why do we elect these officials who get these outrageous amount of money, and they're supposed to, vote for me because I can do this and I can do that, but yet you have to hire somebody to do your own thinking for you? Come on, dude.
Well,
we were born at night, but not last night. You understand?
Well, Lewis, actually, in this case, I think that this, Carl, in this case, this group came in, they were given a grant. They're a national group that has a foundation that supports them. So, I don't think that we paid them for this particular thing. They're kind of doing it as a volunteer panel. So, we can appreciate that. And as far as we know, they are experts on on this topic. And they've definitely got some knowledge to share. And again, they've got the vision that is what we're all looking for, which is why we bring them in, because they are sellable, they are marketable, and it is our elected officials' jobs to market the city and market themselves. So we bring in people like this.
That's right. There's nothing wrong with getting that kind of information,
right.
And then you have to filter it through and understand what's doable, what's not doable. That's the problem.
Yes.
And not doing it with stars in your eyes. Lewis, go ahead. You're on the Ross Report, Lewis. Welcome.
Hey, Carol, how are you doing today?
Great. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. It's a beautiful Friday. It's not raining. Start of a wonderful weekend, and
happy
thank
4th.
God for America.
Yeah.
Thank God for America.
Yes, indeed.
You were talking about this earlier, and I just want to bring it up because we're talking about tax dollars and spending of money. And this is right north of Broussard, the Shenandoah subdivision, which is the one that last year flooded. So basically most of the neighborhood, just like so many other people in the August rain. It rained real hard earlier this week, so I drove around to take a look. I just wanted to see what it looked like. And I noticed that, number one, they cleaned the ditches out in the neighborhood. Did a good job. But all the water that leaves the neighborhood that has to flow to the whatever bayou it is near there, all these deep ditches are choked with grasses. They're choked with trash. They're choked with little chicken trees, all the stuff that we all know that perish if they don't clean it out. The subdivision will still flood.
Yeah.
And I'm just bringing it up to you because I just want to know, how do you get the parish money, which has no money, as they say, because of what you were talking about earlier, where everybody has incorporated all the good stuff.
Mm-hmm. I don't know.
We have it was flooded yesterday. Now, none of the houses flooded, but the ditches were flooded. The roads were not under yet, but that wasn't a real big rain. If we have another 10, 15, 20-inch rain in the matter of a couple of days, everybody's house there will flood again, and all they need to do is clean the ditches.
Well, I understand Youngsville was doing that last week to beat the band. I mean, I saw that they were out there, but that's within the municipal limits of Youngsville. I guess you're talking about in the unincorporated area, which is where the real problem is, right?
And that is in the unincorporated area.
Yep, that is the problem.
And the parish refuses unless someone like the great and omnipotent Carol Ross can make a point of it on her show.
Oh, God.
Nobody listens.
Well, they don't have any money. Let's start with that. They don't have any money, and that's the point we're getting to. All these things need to be done. We're not even saying, we're not taking any sides on any of that. What we're saying,
I'm not either.
Yeah. So,
but
that's the answer to your question. They don't have any money.
And if they would stop giving away the exemptions, start with those. Start with the low-hanging fruit. Stop giving away the tax dollars.
Right,
You know.
and let's spend our money where we are going to get. Let's have people in government that recognize this simple term: the most bang for your buck.
Yep, there you go.
Do you know how many people flooded in the Lafayette area simply because people are not taking care of the unincorporated areas' drainage?
Yep. Yeah, we need.
It's a shame.
We need a regional look at drainage for sure. Thanks, Lewis. And the best thing that I've heard recently is that FEMA is going to be the catalyst for this because they're tired of shelling out money every time it floods, and so they're getting the metropolitan planning organization together. They're getting the area municipalities, the parish, a lot of different stakeholders together to look at this thing regionally outside of Lafayette Parish as well, because it's all going to go. Where to the Gulf. Mm-hmm. Eventually, it's all going to get to the Gulf. All right, we have Krista, and then we have to take a break. Krista, go ahead. You're on the Ross Report. Welcome.
Hey, Carol. I happen to live downtown near the Uptown Lofts, and they're so lovely, I must admit. Can you hear the sarcasm?
Yes, I can. Dripping. It's dripping.
Yes. Well, I personally knocked on the doors of everybody around there who wanted that lovely monstrosity, and they didn't. Everybody said no, they didn't want one. And when we were in our neighborhood association meeting, I believe it was Stephanie Cornet who asked about property values related to this thing, and would they go up, and then would they actually go down? And Greg Gosh's response was, yes, they would actually go up a little, and then they would go down.
I'm curious, Krista, do you own property in that area?
Yes, I live on South Pierce Street. I have an old house down the street.
What do you think happened to the value of your home? Did it go up or down? Now, if you said today.
Today, I'm not certain. But I do know this, that there are people who live across the street from Uptown Loft who have had their property broken in, who have not had their property broken into before.
Right.
And I know that, and that's on both sides of the project.
Yeah.
I have not checked my assessment value, but I know that everybody I talk to says, yes, it's a housing project. And nobody wants to live near a housing project.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Unfortunately, that is true.
Huh?
Unfortunately, that is true. That is true.
I mean.
And that was built with the assistance. That was... the LPTFA put up the money for that, huh?
The LPTFA, and someone please correct me, but I pulled the property assessments when this thing was going on. I believe they paid double what the houses were that were sitting on the property, with our money.
Yeah,
And then,
it was a noble goal with horrible execution.
Well, you know what? It's not good to warehouse people. They are warehousing people, and like we said, at this point, we're still kind of a low-income neighborhood. We've got some issues. When this thing was going to go up, we had 3 homeless shelters. Now we've only got 2. So they've taken these people and they've warehoused them in a neighborhood that's kind of struggling, which is not really fair to them.
No. Right. And Tim's point was, to your point about warehousing people, Tim's point was you could put them into a nice 3-bedroom home for a lot cheaper per square foot.
Yeah, I ran the numbers I tried to run the numbers for LPTFA. I said, look, why don't we just put them in a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home?
Yeah, and I believe after it was built,
that went nowhere.
It was assessed for less than it actually. It's worth actually less than they say it is.
Well, when you look at the developers' fees and all the other.
I can tell you that with the $18 million that was spent on it, if you emptied that place, emptied it today and sold it to an investor, I would guess you could maybe get, I don't know, maybe $7 million, maybe half at the most. My brother thinks it's less than that. He thinks it's much less. But other real estate guys I know, but I would say 7 at best. So
yeah. Well, the parking's bad too. You realize, and I was in on all of those meetings too because it's my neighborhood. They don't have enough parking, and the city making Congress Street now a 2-lane, which has added parking, has screwed up the flow of traffic, and the flow of traffic is bad there anyway because Gosh's hair lied in a meeting and said they were going to do a traffic study, which they never did. So when you come off of Congress or you cross Congress, you catch people going between cars to whatever cafe that is or the other one. So it's not actually safe for people with children because there's nowhere for them to play.
No.
I mean, there's nothing there.
Krista.
I know. And
I feel your pain, kiddo. I really do, because I know what you've been fighting for all these years.
Well, it's not just that. It's now, we brought in Wallace, Roberts, and Todd. I believe that's right.
That's
because we want to do all this design, and we want downtown to be better. But as a person who lives in downtown, we are continually designing over the people that live here, and we are fixing to put in a giant freeway when large cities all over the country are taking them out. We're like way behind, the trend.
No, that's a whole other topic, Krista.
Yeah.
I understand completely, but I'm glad you brought us up to date on that Uptown Lofts, because that was many of us who fought that. Oh my gosh, we got nowhere. We got nowhere because it was the shiny new object that was going to solve all the problems, and nobody was listening to reason. Nobody. We have to take a break. Okay. We'll be right back on the Ross Report. Stay with us, won't you? We have a line for you, 232-1542, if you want to get in on the conversation with Tim Supple and Adam Chapman on the Ross Report.
It's automatic and I talk with old friends and conversation.
All right, I'm speechless. There was a very interesting meeting this morning. We're going to continue that conversation about downtown that Tim and Adam attended with the presentation by the Urban Land Institute and some of the recommendations that they made. Okay, who wants to start? Because there's so much in there.
Well, I thought one of the more interesting ones that I think a lot of people will be curious about was that they actually recommended to immediately remove the moratorium on bars in downtown Lafayette. Now, they coupled that recommendation with some thoughts on how to better manage, and I hope that doesn't mean picking and choosing those who are allowed to do that business. But there was a cheer from the crowd and applause on the idea of removing that moratorium to create some more business.
Well, how about just having better security? And with more bars, you have more people. They really do need to bring a modest assessment in for the weekend patrols, et cetera, because it was so unfair. I think the original assessment, which is why they did away with it, I think, completely for right now, temporarily. Right. Okay. Now, what about the parking garage? Parking is a big issue downtown.
Parking was something a few folks mentioned last night at the finance committee meeting. That there's not enough parking. There's not enough parking downtown. There's not enough parking, and I think personally, I think this is a big mentality, more of a cultural mentality issue than anything, which is, 2 blocks for us is too far. Right? I mean, that is too. And you know what? It is hot and mosquitoes and it's raining 80% of the time, but 2 blocks for us is too far. This morning I had to park 2 blocks maybe away from the meeting and thought, man, this is too far. And then I realized, you know what? This is really not that bad. This is not that bad. And so parking is continuously an issue that people bring up, but we wonder if it really is an issue. And I know a couple of the bar owners who were there last night, they really feel like parking is kind of a key to the security issues that they're having downtown. We don't charge for parking after after nightfall. We don't charge for parking in many of the surface lots. And so that's where people hang around. That's where trouble starts. That's where the drinking continues when the bars are closed and after hours. And so I think there were some great recommendations last night from those that spoke, and again today, about how to kind of change that landscape that would naturally help us solve some of those issues.
Well, again, on the parking, we're subsidizing all the parking downtown. Like I was saying, if you look at the garages, the 2 garages, Buchanan and Vermilion, together they lose over $300,000 a year.
What?
And that's just on operating expenses.
Parking garages usually are money makers.
No, there's no possible way they can make money. A normal parking garage, just to give you an idea, in most cities, a monthly rate's $400 to $500 a month. Mm-hmm. Vermilion is $40 a month.
Oh no! Oh, okay. Wow.
So Vermilion all day parking is $3. So how are you going to make it up on it? The average cost to run a parking garage, just operating a cost, and these are very general numbers, but they're nationwide. The average costs $25,000 to $20,000 to $25,000 per space to build it. It costs $500 a year. a month to run it. Per space. So if you're charging $40 a month, you're not going to make it up on
You're
volume.
not even close. Yeah, exactly.
So So none of this makes any sense. I'm sorry. It's $500 per year.
Per year.
Operating expenses. I'm sorry. Yeah. And so even at $40 per month, that's less. That's the operating expense. You haven't paid for any of the infrastructure, anything. So, yeah, there's a parking problem downtown. It's losing money again.
All right. Now, those automated meters you said are in?
That was one of I'm not too sure about this topic, but somebody brought that up last night. They were wondering why the automated meters have not been put in, that supposedly they're already here in our possession, but the installation hasn't.
But I think the real thing for right now, and the reason they keep bringing these people in, they keep doing these studies, and they keep making these, it's all about residential downtown. That is the shiny object, and that's all they want to talk about. David, go ahead. You're on the Ross Report. Welcome, David.
I caught Kelly, but can y'all hear me?
Yeah, sure.
Who owns Uptown Loft?
That's a good question.
It's owned by a private group of investors that bought it. With the way Uptown Loft was financed is federal tax credits. So basically, the federal government put up the money, and I may not have this right, but I think it's for 90% of the profit. The investors put up 10% under the auspices that they have a controlled rent for 15 years. After 15 years, the private investors will own the complex. It will be off. They own it now,
right?
But they will not have any restrictions on their rent
after that.
And I have one more other question for you guys. Hello.
Sure,
yeah,
go ahead.
We're here. We're listening.
I don't know how true this is, but I read recently that they're supposed to build some more like that somewhere off of Monroe Street.
Well, I know that LPTFA has announced that they want to build another complex or apartment groups down there, but I don't know if it's low income. I don't know anything about it. As you can tell, I'm not too welcome at LPTFA meetings.
None of us.
I don't know. What does that thing stand for? What do they do?
Okay, Lafayette Public Trust Finance Authority. It was formed back in the 70s as an indentured. It was under the city of Lafayette, because back then it was so expensive to get people into housing that they formed this thing, and they get federal tax credits in order to help people make a down payment on a home. That was the original intent. What has happened is it's gone way off the rails since then. Now, I don't mind some of the projects that they do that are for the public benefit, but there are many projects that they do that are that make no sense at all, like the Uptown Lofts and like some of the ones that benefit private developers and don't benefit the community. Now, there are projects that they have helped. They helped to buy the federal building.
Right.
They helped to finance the horse farm, I believe. They help with that. I mean, there are some good things that they do that benefit the community in general. But too often, in my opinion, they have gone off the rails.
Okay. I appreciate that help. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for calling in. Yeah, I mean, I think so many times, again, they do the road to hell paved with good intentions. They do things with the best of intentions, thinking it's going to be a catalyst for something good downtown. Oh, let's build these Uptown Lofts, and artists and, nice people will be good citizens of downtown, and it'll help to build the residential downtown, which is what the Holy Grail is.
Well, the idea of the residential, at least it seems like they're right. It would be the catalyst, but it would if it was traveling under its own power. That's the difference, right? It's the right idea. Right. It's just the wrong path.
If it would work, why wouldn't the private sector do it?
Right. We would already be there. It already exists. And it gets to, and this is one of the problems we have in Louisiana as a whole, particularly this parish. We're a small parish. We're a condensed parish. So we have a large portion for the number of people from sales taxes and property taxes that we get. So we should be doing really good. Mm-hmm. We really should. Something's wrong off the rail. And at the core of this issue, I think, gets to be the way we tax property at all. And the idea that we use economic development dollars or tax dollars, whether they're federal, state, or local, to stimulate. And I'm going to give you one really good example of why these groups actually are fighting against each other. The Whitney National Bank building downtown. I had the Whitney National Bank building under contract for about $2 million. And before I had CGI came in and said, we'd like to look at some of the office space you got here for our temporary use. I was having dinner with them, and I said, you know what? I'm probably not going to wind up buying this building. It's got some environmental problems I don't want to deal with, yada, yada. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll give CGI my contract. I'll give it to you, free. That's $2 million, 50,000 square feet. That's, $50 a square foot? Is that what it was? $40 a square foot. You can put $50 a square foot into it and have a Class A building, 400 people. You got your own designated parking, private parking.
Oh, that would have been perfect, yeah.
Put the money there. The total cost is going to be somewhere around $6 million. You'll be in there at under $100 a square foot, $7 million tops. They said, we can't do that. Why can't you do it? We would love to be downtown, but we've already committed for LITA to build us with UL a $15 million building next to the Light Center. So that's $300 a square foot, and they don't even have they have a gravel parking lot. So when I heard this, I went to DDA and I said, "You've got to say something." We can't say anything, Tim. You've got to say this will solve your downtown problem in one fell swoop. But the plan of UL is to develop, and LITA is to develop residential, commercial, and office space, which they've now done, residential and restaurants and bars next to the Cajun Dome across there. And I said, if that's the plan, who would invest in downtown?
Mm-hmm. Good question.
And
what was the answer?
You're getting it right now. Silence.
Crickets. Okay. All right. Joey, go ahead. You're on the Ross Report. Welcome.
Hi, gang. Good Friday afternoon to y'all.
You too, Joey.
I've witnessed over time the Section 8 housing, and I'm from Abbeville. If you go downtown Abbeville, there's a certain section where there's really nice houses, but as you move away from downtown, the Section 8 housing is just killing the city. These people rent. They have no reason to take care of it. They ruin it, and then they move out, and they go get another house somewhere. They rent it, they ruin it, and they move out. Until we do away with these folks that are getting free rent and no reason to keep it up, it follows everywhere they go.
No, it's a real problem, Joey. You're right. I don't know what the answer is. There are people who need help. But look, there are great organizations like Habitat for Humanity. Look at the work they do. And they put people into individual housing. And they train them how to make payments and be responsible citizens and all that. And it's a pay it forward. They have to put some sweat equity in.
That's right.
What a
they
great
have to work for it.
That's right.
That's the difference.
That is
They're not
exactly.
giving it.
So my point is, why the heck would we have anything besides Habitat for Humanity doing this kind of thing with a partnership of businesses? As they're doing right now, they do amazing work.
Once you teach somebody how to fish, Carol, they're independent. Then they don't need you to get along in life.
I know. And once you teach them how to fish, they just sit in that boat and drink beer.
That's right.
I just saw that the other day. It was from one of my fisherman friends. Thanks, Joey. We have to take a break. We're up against a hard break. And we'll be back for our final segment on the Ross Report with Tim Supple and Adam Chapman. Stay with us, won't you? All right. Now, I want to make something clear here. Lest you think these gentlemen, and especially Tim Supple, don't know what they're talking about. Tim is a developer. So you talked about the Whitney Bank building, but the situation with the courthouse, that presents a whole bunch of different other
it's a real, it becomes a complex issue. It's got a lot of asbestos in it. I looked at it. I suggested to some councilmen that, why don't you let's look at it. Let's look what we can do with it. Let's see if we can sell it or do something with it. Maybe I'll buy it. Maybe I'll do whatever. But the reality is the building as it is, because if it's asbestos, has a negative value.
Yeah.
The reconstruction cost, and I'm using $13 a square foot, which is the latest appraisal I have on land downtown. Now, whether that's right or wrong, we can argue that, but that's the latest appraisal I have downtown land. it will cost about 1.2 to 1.5 million to knock it down.
Jeez.
So that means the value of the courthouse, if it wasn't there, is about 700,000, 750,000. The cost to get rid of it is going to be 1.2 to 1.5 million. So it has a negative value as it is. Now, I think someone could go in there, and there might be someone willing to go in there and pay that, spend the money. If you give it to them, it's a negative value, have a negative bid. Give them a situation where you say, you may buy it, but you must tear it down in 3 months, and you must start building in 6 or 9 or 12, whatever, negotiate with them, and let the businessman go in there. We have tons of great developers in Lafayette who I promise you will be fighting for a chance to build something as long as they're not regulated to build what their vision is, as long as they build something
that
makes
will work
sense.
and which will make sense and make money.
Right.
Make money.
And make money.
Joey, go ahead. You're on the Ross Report. Welcome, Joey.
Hey, guys. I'm really enjoying the show. I got out of my car for a little bit, so I was hoping y'all were continuing the conversation. But a good part of it, I found great irony in the fact that he was comparing some stuff to River Ranch. And way back in the day, I may be dating myself, but this was at a time when I worked downtown, and downtown used to be a ghost town.
Uh-huh.
And they actually brought in a gentleman, and you might have been there, Carol. They brought in a gentleman to basically meet with a group of people, and his concept was reinvigorating the downtown area, which included restaurants primarily and the bars, and, of course, art galleries, and the concept was renting the upper floors of downtown to lower, not low income, but lower income, as he called them, the artsy-fartsy people, starving artists, so they could actually live cheaply and create this quote-unquote village within the city. Well, those same people, and again, downtown actually took some of that advice, and
I know who you're talking about. Yeah, and he made some very good points. Yeah. Exactly.
And, the great irony was the people at River Ranch were at that meeting, or the people that owned the sugarcane fields that were River Ranch at the time took that same concept and basically expanded on it, and that was the birth of River Ranch. That was sugarcane fields off of Collie Saloon. That was undeveloped land. Camellia Boulevard wasn't cutting through there at the time, and they took that concept to a higher scale and created the River Ranch that is now a village within the city.
Wow.
So the fact that he's comparing those two, I kind of had to laugh, because the original concept was create low-income housing or for your starving artists, young people that would be willing to live in a downtown area for cheaper on the upper floors of these buildings that house retail, restaurants, and bars beneath them. And I don't know if that part ever developed as far as the people living down there, but that was what spawned River Ranch in Lafayette.
Well, thanks, Joey. Thanks for that comment. John, go ahead. You're on the Ross Report.
Carol, I just want to say two things. That development downtown, I remember when they had the meeting for it, I couldn't go, but I sent Joanne Miller, who's head of the Hemophilia Foundation in Lafayette at the time, and she recommended, I told her what I would like to see, and she followed what I told her. And a lot of stuff came to pass, like the trees downtown, exposing some of the brick roads, redoing of where
that was part of
Square was.
Right, that's part of Streetscape. That was right, exactly.
And they did that. And let's tell you this. I haven't got a computer, but when I was in Houston in 1995 or something, they did an expose on the Houston Chronicle about Habitat for Humanity in Houston and how it was a dismal failure for them. If you can research that and look it up, I'd be interested to find out if I'm correct on that.
Well, I don't know about Houston, but I know about Lafayette, and I know the people who run Habitat for Humanity in Lafayette, and they are all first-rate people, and they've done amazing work. I'm sorry for Houston that it didn't quite work out for them. I don't know about the river, that downtown meeting. I was out of one of those, several of those with Ralph Burgard. He was one of them. His whole point was that You had to have a safe environment for people. The way you can tell if a community is really safe is the life in the streets. If people feel safe about going out into the streets and walking around, et cetera, and there's a lot of activity out in the streets, then you know that you have a safe community because they feel safe about doing that. I think that was what was envisioned, and I believe that's how it really did start out downtown. What has happened downtown since then? There's a mix. It's a mixed bag. It's good. There are some downsides. But would I prefer what happened before we did Streetscape and really fixed up the downtown? Absolutely not. The return on the dollar that we've gotten for the investment in downtown, that has been provable. I mean, the improvements in the buildings and the office buildings and all that. They're paying property taxes, et cetera. I think that's been a value. The thing that these two gentlemen, Tim Supple and Adam Chapman, are trying to say is let's be reasonable and let's have a realistic policy for doing these things, and let's stop giving away the candy store.
And let's let the businessmen and the developers who know this stuff inside and out, let's let them do this themselves.
Exactly.
Let's sell that property that's been a burden on us, not on the tax roll, and costing us money. Let's just sell it. Sell it and let the next guy
take the government's thumb off the scale.
Right. And they will make something happen because they're incentivized to make money.
Exactly. Tim?
Yeah, I agree. That's it. You know, the free market works great.
Absolutely.
You don't need it. Government can only distort the marketplace.
There you go. Tim Supple, Adam Chapman, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you being here, and I know our listeners do too.
Yeah, thanks.
Getting that information out is critical. Thanks so much. Everybody have a great weekend. We'll be back Monday.